The quest for freedom is stronger than steel, more permanent than concrete.
They knew the difference between freedom and tyranny, and they stood up for the one and they damned the other.
We know what works. Freedom works. We know what's right. Freedom is right.
Freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction.
It may be hard to remember now, that's why we showed it, but there was a time when Republicans thought they had a monopoly on the word freedom. But now, as the MAGA version of that party rifles through libraries to find books they can ban and rips abortion rights away from American women, as they did just today in Iowa, Democrats have a real opening to make the case that actually they are the party of freedom. Just listen to how Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro talked about Donald Trump and freedom earlier today.
While he's hugging the flag, you know what he's doing? He's ripping away our freedoms. That's what he's all about, because here's what I know. It's not freedom to tell our children what books they're allowed to read. That's not freedom. It is not freedom to tell people they can go to work, but they can't join a union. That's not freedom. It is not freedom to tell women what they're allowed to do with their bodies. That's not freedom.
Jon Favreau served as a speechwriter to President Barack Obama. He is now a co-host on the Pod Save America podcast, as well as co-author of the New York Times #1 best-selling book, Democracy or Else, How to Save America in 10 Easy Steps. No time like the present to read that one. Okay, so Jon, thank you for joining me. That's a really...
Thanks for having me.
I thought thank you for being here. I thought that was a very good riff by Governor Shapiro. You've written a lot of these, and Pete Buttigieg has done a similar riff on freedom. A couple of people did. I wanted to get your take on Shapiro's riff and also Democrats' effort to kind of seize freedom back as a term they're using in their messaging.
Well, you remember you and I were at the 2004 convention with our old boss, Barack Obama, who was then not our boss, but gave that very famous speech at that convention. And I think the reason people still remember that speech, which was now 20 years ago, is that what he did there was he tried to reclaim patriotism. And he reclaimed patriotism by letting people know that the values embedded in our founding documents, that we're all created equal, that we all have the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that when we haven't lived up to those ideals in the past, men and women in this country have fought and bled so that we actually could, so that we could make things better. And then every time that happened, we broadened the American story. We broadened the American family to include more people and provide more freedom for people. Mm-hmm. And I do think that what Josh Shapiro and Kamala Harris and a lot of Democrats right now are doing is trying to reclaim that patriotism from Donald Trump and his party, because their patriotism is an airbrushed patriotism. And Donald Trump, as Josh Shapiro has pointed out, likes to talk down America all the time. And I do think making that context is really important, especially since Trump and the Republicans have embraced ideas that are so far outside the mainstream and so extreme.
No question about it. It was interesting watching the Republican riffs from years ago. Some of them seem a little robotic. That was one of my takeaways, too. But so let me ask you, the Democratic convention feels like it's far away. It's not that far away. And we've seen, the country has seen, I should say, the vice president's stump speech, her attack lines. It's been very well received. She's got a lot of good lines in there. But you've written a lot of convention speeches. They're different from your stump speech. And she's working on that now. No question about it. She has to be. How is it different? And what do you think, if you're them, you should be thinking about trying to land in that?
Well, I also think that Kamala Harris's convention speech is going to be even more different than the usual convention speech, because no major party nominee has ever reintroduced themselves to a national audience with their convention speech. Usually you do that with your announcement speech. You have plenty of time. You have the spring. And so I think she has to do a couple of things in the speech, which I imagine they're going to do, which she wants to reintroduce herself, talk about her bio, talk about what she's done, define herself on her terms, talk about her second term, talk about what her agenda is going going to be. To the extent that that's different than the Biden administration's or even similar, people want to know what she's going to do. And I think that she also probably wants to embrace that sense of patriotism, because the Republicans and Donald Trump are going to try to paint her as other. She is not like us. It's us versus them. They do that with every Democrat. They've done that for the last several years. And because people don't know Kamala Harris as well as they knew Joe Biden, she's going to want to sort of define herself as someone who loves this country, who's been given every chance by this country, who's worked hard and wants to make sure that everyone else has that chance too, and that everyone else has that right to freedom that was in our founding document. So I think that's probably, she has a lot to do in the speech, but I think what they're going to do in the speech will end up being the stump speech she uses from the convention through to Election Day.
Oh, that's an interesting point. The other piece that's different about this convention, as you said, it's people. She's being introduced. That's part of what the convention is. She's being introduced uniquely because she's only been, the clear or the front runner for a week now. There's all these other former presidents, there's prominent governors, there's all these people who are going to give speeches. How does that orchestra work? I ask this because we love to talk about what's happening behind the scenes on this show to help people understand. And all these people are working on their speech, and they've had to readjust them since the politics of the 2024 campaign changed a week ago.
Yeah, I mean, look, each speaker, especially the primetime speakers, are going to want to credential Kamala Harris, talk about how they know her, what they know about her, what they know about her values, what she's done, what she will do. And I also think they have to make the case about why Donald Trump and J.D. Vance would be so bad for 4 more years. And so there's actually a lot more to get done at this convention than there would have been, I think, if Biden was the nominee, because I think Biden would have focused solely on the choice between what he's proposing and what Trump's proposing. In this convention, you have to introduce a new nominee, you have to introduce new policies, and then you still have to make sure that the choice between Trump and Harris is as clear as possible, and that it actually means something to people's lives, how Trump would affect their lives and how Harris would affect their lives.
We only have a few seconds left, and you may not have one person. You can name more than one. Do you have a vice presidential running mate choice?
I don't have a choice. I mean, I'm as Waltz-pilled as anyone else, but I also think Josh Shapiro would be fantastic. I think Mark Kelly would be fantastic. Any of those 3, to me, I'd be pretty excited about.
Your top 3. In the spirit of the Olympics, they all get a medal. Jon Favreau, thank you, as always, for joining me. Everyone go buy his book if you're inspired right now. Really appreciate it. I've got one more thing to tell you about before we go today. We're back after a very quick break.